Hi, everyone. So for this presentation, I chose to interview my grandmother, Mary. This is her on her 90th birthday with her kids and grandkids. Mary is now 92. She is a Caucasian female, primarily of German and Scottish descent. She was born in March of 1929 in Iowa, so right before the Great Depression began. And at 5, her family moved to California, where she has lived ever since in various areas. She lived in the Valley, lived in Los Angeles for a long period of time, and then moved back to the Central Valley in retirement. At 92, she is a widow and has been since 1996. She has 2 living children, ages 69 and 65. A third adult child passed away in 2017 at the age of 68. She has 5 grandchildren, ranging from ages 29 up to 51, and 7 great-grandchildren, with the youngest being 4 and the oldest being 27. She lives in her home still with one of her adult children. She partially retired in 1987, but has been fully retired since about the year 2000, so about 21 years ago. For her physical development since 65, my grandma has noticed that her most steady decline in flexibility and increase in arthritis pain started happening after she turned 85. To this day, she still remains active. She rides her stationary bike about 30 minutes a day. Most days she tries to. She, gets up and moves around the house. She pulls weeds in her garden. She leaves sometimes, not so much with the pandemic, but she gets to go out and do things with her siblings. Her general attitude about exercise is not a happy one, but she recognizes the need in order to keep herself active. Grandma Mary declined to speak about her sex drive, to which I'm not surprised. That's not something she's ever been very open about, and I think that comes with her generation generally. Except to remind me that my grandpa died in 1996, so it tells me that it's not been a recent concern of hers. She did use the question, though, as an opportunity to discuss her pregnancies, 4 total, 3 daughters and 1 stillborn son, and how those affected her body and the lasting effects of childbearing and motherhood. And, she tripped and broke a toe because a child was in her way, and it was a very long tangent, but a lot of nice family memories came out of it. For her cognitive development, I chose to observe. I lived with my grandmother for most of my life, from the time I was born until I moved out as an adult. And I have very clear memories as a child of her, quick wit, and, she always came to parent-teacher conferences, stayed very current with world affairs and news, and staying with the times in terms of technology that was up and coming in her, advancing age. Today she has an iPad and an iPhone that she uses daily. We talk regularly. She FaceTimes my kids sometimes. Though she hasn't been exactly keen on cutting her landline and relying solely on a cell phone like most people do at this point. Actually, I'm not sure about that. I think it's most people. I will say that keeping her cooped up in the house and quarantined during COVID has affected her social skills. It has hindered them a bit. She's not making phone calls as much as she used to. She's not going as many places. She finds it, difficult to breathe with a mask, so she'd just prefer to stay home. And that in turn means that the only people she talks to are me and my husband and my kids and, my mother that lives with her. So her social circle has gotten very small, and I've noticed that she is not as outgoing as she used to be. She's not as talkative as she used to be, and I think she's just slowly starting to decline in those social skills. But at 92 still, she can still drive, and technically she has little to no memory issue, which is amazing. She has no problem recalling what happened yesterday or what happened 40 years ago, or telling me about something her mother did when she was a child. That is all stuff she remembers very well. For her career, she had a few different career choices. At 17, she went to live in San Francisco for a short period of time with her sisters, and she worked at a telephone company as an operator. And then she was a bank secretary for a period of time. But she did get married at 19, and from that point on, she was a stay-at-home wife and mom until her youngest was a teenager. And at that point, they went into business for themselves, my grandparents. They opened a gas station with a mechanic shop, and she ran the business. She did the money, the finances, the hiring, the firing. She was HR, office management, kind of all in one. and had no formal education on stuff like that. It was kind of just a trial and error for her. After they did that for about 20 years, and then after that they retired and moved back to the Central Valley and built a home. Though a couple years later, she did say that she was bored, and so she decided to start a side business. She built dough ornaments with her hands and sold them to various shops here in the valley, out in Carmel. We used to drive them out there for her deliveries. And she did that for about 12 years until her arthritis kind of took hold of her hands, and it was hard for her to manipulate things for several hours a day, several days a week. So she technically fully retired in the year 2000. She didn't attend college, like I said, at any point in her life, though she does say that she wishes she did, which is a surprise to me, and that's not something that I knew or was aware of. I asked her what she would have studied, and she said, I don't know, but a degree would have been nice. Her marriage to my grandfather was long, about 47 years, though their courtship was short by today's standards. They dated for about 6 months, and then they got engaged and were married 2 months later, and they remained married until he died in 1996. Her closest friends were always her sisters. She's one of 10 children, and 4 of those 4 other children are girls, so her sisters were her closest friends. But she did maintain other friendships outside of the family. There was a couple that they were neighbors with at an early point in their marriage, and they maintained friendship with them until they both passed away, 40, 50 years later. At this age, she still has 2 of her sisters left, and they are significantly younger than her by about 15 years. So they do maintain weekly phone calls. They talk often, and they've, maintained a good, close relationship. Outside of family, though, she really doesn't socialize with very many people. She says that her most memorable event as an adult was, sadly, the death of her oldest daughter. They were only 20 years apart, and they were very close for my aunt's entire life. From an observational standpoint, I agree that this had a lasting effect on her. It's definitely made her more jaded than I've ever seen, and I get that. No parent wants to bury their child. It's just not a fun topic. She was excited to participate in this little study. Something that she says that she wishes she could impart on the younger generations, though, is something that her and her sister worked on, which is keeping up with genealogy. Her and her sister put in many years of work to create this lovely piece of genealogy, and it's a family history dating all the way back to the 1540s, of family that in Prussia, where they originated from. She wishes that this is something that would be continued with future generations, and that we are already working on a second volume to the book, so we're having a lot of fun with it.